if you are someone who recently left religion, or maybe your spouse left religion, then this Interfaith Marriage series is definitely for you. Welcome to the channel where I talk about exiting cults as well as exiting religion and sharing my journey on exiting religion. I am agnostic and my husband is a devout Christian believer. When we got married, we were both Christian, and now one of us is no longer Christians. I take it day by day, but I decided there must be so many people out there who are dealing with this situation, so why don't I just make a series and give you as much possible advice as I can. Conflict for when it comes to deciding whether or not should you go to church services. Should you go just for the emotional, moral support, for the respect of their faith? If you don't believe in religion anymore, you most likely will not want to continue attending, especially if you recently left religion like myself. I recently fully stopped and I let him know I'm no longer going to be going. He does go and he takes our 2 kids with him as well. If you are the unbelieving spouse, you may hear things like, well, we're a family, we're supposed to go to church, we're supposed to stick together. Depending on your kids' ages, if you feel like it's an appropriate time to explain it to them in a way where they will understand, then you have to think about that as well. One more thing, you may have people who were a part of your church tell you that you should be going because a family is supposed to go together. I had this one woman come up to me and say, you should be going to church with your family because you're all supposed to be a Christian. Well, if that's true, then that would be basically me lying. Does that make any sense? Should I pretend to be someone I'm not just because my husband is something that he is? No. Conflict on how to raise children, that is something that is definitely going to occur. If you don't have any kids, then obviously you can skip over number 2 because it won't apply to you. If you are the believing spouse, I'm pretty sure you want to raise your children with the belief, with the faith, that's totally understandable. If you're the unbelieving spouse, then you may either want to avoid raising your children with religion. Maybe you went through something traumatic. Maybe you felt like you lived a lie your entire life. Whatever it is, you get to decide. That is something only you and your spouse can decide. No one in church and no one outside of church can or should tell you how to raise your children. I told my husband, if you want to take the kids with you and if you want to raise them to believe in Jesus and to believe in God and all these things, I'm totally down. I'm totally supportive of that. However, I also made sure to let him know that when they get older, they get to decide. They have to be the ones to decide what they believe in. We cannot force feed them religion. We cannot scare them into believing. I teach my kids the morals without the religion, without the Bible. I honestly believe that we have the answers within ourselves, but I also believe that we have to, as non-believers, respect our believing spouse, because the same way that we want them to respect what we don't believe or what we do believe, we have to respect what they do believe and what they don't believe. Your spouse may feel that you are teaching your children opposite. Your spouse may feel that your children are going to follow in your footsteps. Even though we as the unbelievers may feel like what we're doing is okay, they as the believers see it totally differently. They use the Bible as their guide, and according to the Bible, you have to raise your children a certain way. It's a whole lot of conflict, but really it's something that takes a lot of communicating. Your spouse may feel hurt and betrayed. You are going to have moments where they're just going to express their emotions, their feelings. There may be moments where your spouse may just come off a certain way. Just try not to internalize it. You have to really realize that they're hurt. And sometimes during our journey of exiting religion, it's so complicating and it's so stressful and there's just so much going on and it gets so busy in our minds that we don't really think about what our spouse is thinking. We don't really think about putting ourselves in their shoes. How would you as the unbeliever feel if you were the believer and your spouse was the one leaving? It wouldn't be easy. It would be difficult. What would it be like if I was the one who was like this devout, heavy believer and my husband was the one who said, I'm sorry, I don't know what to believe. I don't want to be a part of this anymore. I know it'll be hard and it would hurt. From the way I used to see religion, I would definitely be afraid for his his life. I'll be afraid that he would go to hell. So when I thought about it in that way, as much as I don't want to think about it like that, that's the truth. We cannot run away from the truth. So the truth is that we have to put ourselves in our spouse's shoes and try to have a little compassion, understand it's going to take time for them, because right now your believing spouse most likely feels like you betrayed God and you betrayed him as well, or her as well. You have to give it time. It's not an overnight easy fix it solution. It definitely takes a lot of time and a lot of patience and a lot of crying and a lot of anger, a lot of stress, a lot of emotions, a lot of everything. But you give it time, and that's the best that you can do. As a free thinker, being married to a believer who only uses mainly the Bible to follow as their guide in their life is going to be very difficult, because as it says in the Bible, this is instantly the scripture that most likely your spouse is going to look towards, and they're going to feel conflicted. Now you're considered unequally yoked. When you have someone in the household who is a free thinker, who looks through the lens of not a specific religious lens, but looks in general overall, and then you have a spouse who only looks through the lens of the Bible, your conversations are going to be different. The environment is going to shift a bit. There are going to be things that you as a believer are going to feel is okay or is allowed, whereas your spouse who is a believer is going to still have those limitations. Is it okay for me to do this, or is it not okay? What does the Bible say about this? What does the Bible say about that? This is something that takes time. This is something that takes a crap load of patience. I try my best now to no longer be a part of any religious conversation. As soon as I feel like it's heading towards my husband speaking in biblical terms, I exit. I don't think of it as running away. I think of it more as trying to save face. Loneliness and despair. You might have been a part of Christianity for your entire life, or maybe for a majority of your life, or you might have a huge community of people at your church and now you're no longer attending, and even if they're still a part of your life, they might not understand certain things when it comes to your beliefs and your disbeliefs. That can cause a lot of loneliness. You have to try to find support, little community that can relate to you, that can understand where you're coming from. For the believing spouse, it's going to be lonely for them as well. The believing spouse is gonna feel like even though they have a community at church, they don't have their spouse with them. So for both partners in the relationship, I just suggest that you find a community that can understand. If you are a non-believing spouse, you want to find a community of people, whether it's online or offline, who understand what it's like to leave religion. If you're a believing spouse, you want to find people who understand what it's like to be married to someone who's no longer a part of religion. Your believing spouse may try to convince you right away why you should believe, why you should go back to the faith. When my husband noticed that I was losing my sight of religion and I was starting to do research, and I was just like, you know what, I'm not feeling this at all. I don't relate to this at all anymore. The first thing that he did was he started reading to me Bible scriptures, and he started showing me videos and showing me movies, trying to convince me why I should go back. It was only confusing me more. When you're just now entering that journey of leaving your belief behind, it's a confusing time. You're going through these motions where you're just like, I don't know what to believe. Do I believe in this? Do I believe in that? But this doesn't make sense. That doesn't make sense. And then you start asking questions, and then one question leads to another question, which leads to another question. If that was the case, then why God didn't do this? And why didn't God just do that? And if this is a case, like, it gets so freaking confusing. Honestly, I've had so much confusion. I've had moments where I had to walk away and be like, I can't do this right now. I don't want to do this anymore. As a believing spouse, you have to try to just take it easy and be aware that your spouse did not choose this. Your spouse did not just wake up one day and say, you know what, I don't want to believe in religion anymore. I'd rather go out there and sin and become a stripper, start sleeping around. So yeah, that's a good idea. I'm going to leave religion just so I can do whatever the hell I wanted to. That is a myth. That's what people say. That's what people want to assume. A lot of times, like most cases, like myself, we truly just don't believe anymore. Your spouse is now questioning things. Your spouse is now just beginning to really ask the hard questions. We are taught in religion not to question God, not to question the Bible. It's kind of like what I always say, once you open the door to logical thinking, it's really hard to shut it. You do have to give your unbelieving spouse some time, because this is probably the most confusing time of their life. You may deal with guilt when it comes to not going to church on Sundays anymore. You may even feel guilt over your own spouse and how they may be feeling about the fact that now they're with someone who is no longer a believer. They go to church and they're amongst all these believers, and then they go back home and here you are, the heathen. I'm joking, you're not a heathen. I always say that joke. The guilt is something that's gonna set in, and this is a time when you have to really think and decide to yourself, do I do these things because this is something I truly believe, or do I do these things because I want to keep my family happy? But when it comes to your spouse, you may feel like you're not sure if he or she is gonna be fine because they are married to you, and a lot of your relationship in Christianity is built upon the belief that God is in the center. God is the centerpiece. He's a cornerstone. He's the foundation. Because we believe that there is a God that's keeping us just molded and grounded, it's really hard when you leave to be able to stay away from the guilt. If that makes any sense, you're going to have to ask yourself, why do I feel guilty? Should I feel guilty? And what can I do so that I don't have to feel guilty anymore? Because guilt is something that you don't want involved in your headspace when it comes to your journey of leaving religion and trying to figure out what you really believe in. Feeling worried that your spouse may find a church girl. Yes, Lord Jesus. Well, I deal with that actually currently right now, but I'm starting to just kind of let that pass through. My husband has friends in the church who just started dating, and they're always like, she's such a godly woman, this wonderful godly woman. And my husband's like, oh, they look so happy together. And sometimes I may have these insecurities where I'm like, well, I'm not a godly woman, but I'm still a good woman. You, as the unbelieving spouse, may start to feel like your value has gone down, like your worth has gone down. What if my spouse gets tired of the charades and decides, you know what? Depending on how strong your love is and how strong your relationship is, they may or may not begin to fade away at some point in time. It really depends on the relationship. Personally, my relationship has been through all types of hell. If I believe in a hell, I believe the hell comes here on earth, and hell is definitely shaking up my relationship. We've been through it all and we've survived it all. So I sometimes do feel a little bad for my husband, almost like I'm kind of holding him back from finding true happiness with a godly person. And those thoughts can consume me, and I don't like negative thoughts to consume me. I'm all about positive growth. So what I had began to do is I began to just say to myself, you're not a so-called godly woman, but you're a good woman, and you're a positive person, and you're a beautiful person, and you still have just as much worth as the chick over there with the freaking hat on that says I love Jesus. You're just as good as her, or if not even better maybe. Because you're no longer a part of the faith doesn't mean that you mean any less. Yes, your spouse may admit to you that maybe they do wish they could be with a godly person, or they wish that you were the godly person. But that's an issue they have to resolve within themselves. You just have to work on knowing your own personal worth. Your spouse may say some hurtful things to you. They don't necessarily mean, but they may not filter what they say. They may say to you exactly what they're thinking, and it just comes out, and then it's like, why would you say something like that? That was really messed up. You're just gonna have to learn how to not internalize it. And trust me, it is probably one of the hardest things, not internalizing. In the very beginning, my husband would say things like, you better hope that you're right, because when you die, if you're wrong, you're in for a rude awakening. You know, and I knew what he meant. He meant if I'm wrong, I'm gonna go to hell. You're saying that I better be right, because if I'm wrong, I'm gonna go to hell when I die. And so that's fear-based. I chose not to go back to religion off of fear. If I return to religion, it's gonna be because it's something I truly believe, not something I'm truly afraid of. It gets easier as time goes on. Just try to understand, as the unbelieving spouse, that your spouse is just hurt. Your spouse is just responding off of hurt. They're responding off of emotions, and they read the Bible a lot, and the Bible has a lot of stuff that makes a lot of Christians believe that they're right. So technically, to be very honest with you, your spouse just believes that they're right and their religion is right and you're automatically wrong. So try to keep in mind, this is just the doctrine that they're taught and that they read. But don't take crap. Don't let them verbally abuse you or make you feel like crap. Make sure that your spouse understands that what they say hurt. And you have to make sure that you don't hurt your spouse in return. Last thing you want to do is have religion ruin you both and cause you to hurt each other. You're dealing with enough pain as it is. You may realize that this is your test. This is your test to see what's stronger, religion or your love for each other. So depending on which one is stronger, that is the one that will win. Currently, I am in the battle of trying to keep the love alive, trying to keep the marriage alive. I have been staying away from religious talk and just spending a lot of quality time. What is it that you love about your spouse besides the fact that your spouse used to be a believer? I still love things about my husband. There's things about his personal belief that I love. I don't get mad that he's still in the faith. I never try to convince him to leave with me. That's not my place. You have to really focus on the love. You have to try your best not to focus so much on, we don't believe the same thing anymore. You can't focus on these things. You have to focus on each other. Go out for walks together. Go for a bike ride. Go for a nice drive. Have nice, intimate talks about things that have nothing to do with religion. Don't get into arguments over religion. Try to stay away from that, because that's like a black hole that you fall into, and I'm just now climbing my way out of it and trying to stay out of it. And it can become emotional. If you are like me and you're emotional and you have a hard time controlling some of your emotions, I suggest you stay away from it and focus on why you are together, not why you shouldn't be together. That is all I have for you guys when it comes to part 1 of this series, which I hope you guys enjoyed. I tried my very best. I lined it out as good as I could and tried to iron it out for you guys. Just know that you're not alone on this journey if you are the one who has left religion. If you're the person who is still a part of religion and your spouse is the one who left, then you're not alone either. So don't worry, you can definitely make it through. It depends on you. Just make sure that you always stay true and authentic to who you are. Live in your truth. That's the most important thing. All links down below in the description box. You can get my email address, my social media. Make sure that you join me on Beautiful Souls, which is my Facebook group for those of you who have recently left religion or left a cult. If you have a story to share about leaving religion or a story to share about leaving a cult, then shoot me a message. With that being said, I love you guys all so much, and I'll see you in the next video.